I've seen you on video say 100 times you're worried about what Walt's looking at. What is he looking at?
He's looking out into the garden, and he's looking out, and if you go and you sit next to him, it should really be lining up that you're looking out into what is this beautiful sprawling set of gardens as we come around the center hub, but then he's also looking out into the World Showcase Pavilion, which is what we wanted. And if we had set him right in the center, it would have felt, no one sits there, right? You would never, I don't think Walt would ever have sat himself centered. He wasn't that, and as humans, like, we don't center ourselves. And the way that we've built that, if you start at the top of the Spaceship Earth panels, and you follow it, the center seam all the way down to the center seam of the windows, to the center seam of the city progress and the bench, to the center of the hardscape, follow that down to the center of the logo planter, that lines up perfectly with the flag in America. Yeah. Perfectly symmetrical.
So when we talk about Epcot as a symmetrical park, it's symmetrical on that axis, right? So it was important for us to understand that symmetry when we looked at the plan here. And then as you can see today, you guys have been walking around all day. You know, for the first time in a very long time, we can go from the land pavilion over to mission space, right? And this east-west circulation is so critical and confused our guests for a long time when we had the old Communicore buildings, right? They just didn't know how to navigate from one e-ticket to the next. And so part of our plan here is to just provide intrinsic wayfinding. Like, you can see your next destination, but then offer chances to take a bypass, take a minute, and just look at how many people are using some of these seating areas. It's like, it's almost like they've been dying to sit down at Epcot, you know? And it's like, yeah, that's an important thing. You forget that. We've been talking a lot in early design, and you know, I mean, years ago, like, you know, we got an opportunity to put the park back in theme park, right? We never had a park here in the famous theme park. So that's was a real driver on the species, on the size. I mean, this stuff is big, and it takes a lot to get this stuff here, and it was really a driver to make it feel good as we opened, as opposed to waiting for it to grow, right? Go back and look at aerials of when we opened. You know, we had little twigs everywhere, right? And so, but now we have to compete with some really great old growth in World Showcase, some really great old growth over here in World Nature. So it was important for us to go out and find great species.
I mean, that was a deliberate iteration to have sort of the long view and have Walt sort of be a casual, welcoming thing and sort of a park-like atmosphere up at Dreamer's Point. So that was a very deliberate sort of effort. And then you have sort of the view across all the sort of 4 separate gardens that have their own personality, right? So that was a very deliberate move. Yeah.
And Sam, you and I, we've talked now. We were in creations and connections, and I encourage everyone to go back into those spaces, because now they're finally alive the way that we always knew that they would be when there wasn't a wall there. And standing in connections, you can see out into the gardens and into the spaces, and you do get that sense of transparency and diminishing of barriers that we wanted. And then as you'll start to see soon here, when it becomes dark, you can stand right here in this area and you can see all the way into that beautiful mural and connections. You feel the light. The buildings become jewel boxes, and you don't feel the building anymore. You just feel a continued set of environment.
The building
so
is just
good.
like we talked before when we had the fences up. It's like, this is going to be great. It's an extension of the building. We took off the heavy walls. We replaced with glass. We tried to make it transparent, right? We did a magic trick with the building, but you couldn't see it until now. And I think that now, when, as Brianna said, as soon as it gets dusk, give us a half hour, this whole place changes and it looks really incredible.
Speaking of lighting, these
are
Are they so good? Oh, it's so good.
they look reflective of the intersecting triangles.
Yeah. We just have great look. Epcot was a big, bold move, right? And you have to respect it for all that it did, all the patterning, all the materiality, all the honesty in construction, right? It's not a themed park, right? World Showcase has got themed finishes. This part of the park was never themed, it was just Epcot, right? And so when we thought about what patterning and shape language and material language we needed to use, we had to respect those late 70s, early 80s choices and then elevated it in a new way, because some of this curbing they couldn't achieve in 81, right? They couldn't achieve it at all. We can now, but those color choices, material choices are respect for these legacy pavilions, because they're important to us. And this pattern is important to us. And we got to celebrate it. We're going to continue to celebrate it as we move forward. It's just really, you can't ask for a better palette, right? If you just respect it, right?
It's subtle through lines of materiality too. This is the dichroic glass that we used in creations, that we used in connections, that we'll see, elsewhere as we continue to go. And it's not hitting you over the head with it. It's just like Scott was saying, a respect for the materials. And Doug was one of our landscape architects, and I would like him to speak about some of our other materials.
No, I mean, well, there's repeating patterns, and I'm glad you sort of appreciate that. But we sort of want things to be familiar, right? As you go from like green space to green space, there's that comfortable sort of feel as you go through it. And so, the patterns on the light or our structures out here, or even in the paving, and some other surprises that we have out here, are really kind of that sort of bring that familiarity.
It has to feel right? Yeah. And it was really important, and it's going to live for a long time. I mean, we don't get to do this very often. We don't get to do the center of a park very often, and it's like such a privilege to do that. And I've talked before about it, but first step is we had to go backwards, right? We had to figure out what they were up to when Marty and John pushed those models together and tried to figure out what to do. You look back at the original art, we didn't know. Like the original concept, one of the original concept pieces was around the monorail, but World Showcase was emanating off of monorail stops. Like if you look back at some of the original art, right? So they didn't know what they were doing, right? And they landed on this conceit that we love and have come to appreciate, and now we needed to amplify it. What was really Epcot? What is it about? It's its own IP. It's its own place. It's the first non-castle park, man. We want to celebrate it and have fun with it. And it was scary, no doubt, right? Because you're walking in the shadow of giants, who were involved in this thing. And I think the team rose up and we nailed it. I think it's great. We're going to continue to nail it. We're not done.
We're also people who enjoy the parks, and this park specifically, and we have big Epcot fans on our team, but what we felt when we were, trying to figure out the project was we'd go and we'd sit in different areas of the park, and we'd see that there was this need for decompression space, for places where people could enjoy these beautiful environments. So, our team, and as you can see, and I hope you all have been enjoying just sitting and watching and listening and absorbing the environment in truly beautiful spaces, because that was one of the big goals, was giving park back to the park.
Just think about when you visit, right? Think about when you're actually traveling with your family, right? You remember the things you do. You remember Guardians, you remember those things. But the memories that you share for decades after are the moments in between the attractions. The places, the things that you share, the moments you laughed about, or the event that happened, or somebody spilled something and we replaced it magically with a new container of popcorn. That all happens here, right? We needed more space for that. More space for people to invent their own connection, and not just ride shows, attractions. Those are all great. We'll continue to develop those. But we needed more public area. Just give it back to the people who love it. And that's what this is about.
Yeah,
There's nothing wrong with it.
We added almost like an acre of green space here. If you remember what was here before, it was like concrete jungle, right? So this is welcoming. This is an acre of usable green space. It might be passive at the moment, but we're not done. These spaces are gonna get activated, and we added 300 plus trees out here, right? Shades of commodity, right? That comfortable. We're at a beautiful time of year. This is, as this evolves, as this grows, it's gonna,
Right, we talked a lot about we are fans, right? And one of the things we're super fans about is some of the early innovations we did at Epcot, and everybody remembers fiber optic concrete, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was superior, right? It was crazy. How did we do fiber optic concrete? Okay, so we thought about that. We said, what can we do now that is as cool as that, and creates that sense of wonder that is still materially Epcot and doesn't depart from Epcot, right? And so what we've got is Dreamer's Point. I don't know how many, 300 LEDs.
Yeah.
The Starfield in the paving. You can't see them in the light because you can't see them, but they're embedded in the paving pattern just in front of Walt as you look down over Dreamer's Point. And so that Starfield will activate, and it'll reflect what's going on Spaceship Earth.
It is as programmable as Spaceship
Earth.
Yeah,
Also,
it's synchronized. It's an amazing sort of
crazy.
feel out.
And then these rings we talked about a lot when we were initially pitching the project. Those are LED tracks, right? We have full light and color control over those, programming control. These giant show lights, right? Those are the largest theme lights we've built.
Do these have a name? I've been calling them obelisks.
No, they're lovely lights. We love them. Yeah. We got a numerical name we don't want to tell you about.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, but they were the largest show lights we ever built until we built those show lights out there. So those are going to be even bigger. Those are coming later. But these guys are fully programmable. You're going to see those for the first time in about 15, 20 minutes. You're going to see those come to life here. And it just changes the complexity, changes the whole sensibility of the place. And it has its own show, its own identity, and its own placemaking. And it can be deferential to what's happening at the Loon later tonight, but then it can also celebrate what's happening on Spaceship Earth and tie together and energize the space, right? And so that
And
activation is like so great.
It will evolve from what you see today. It will evolve to next week. It will evolve in a month.
It's like a toolkit. It's like the coolest toolkit you can imagine. You've seen everything we've done on Spaceship Earth, right? I mean, all the things we continued, all the great programming. But please pay attention to the show that we got tonight, because it made Brianna cry last night. And there's a special moment in there. I'm sure you'll figure it out. But it's very respectful of where we've been and very optimistic of where we're heading. And it's a great show on its own.